All right, and we're live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of your favorite new podcast, Notable Quotables. Today with me, I have poet, author, good friend of mine, Sean. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You want to give the people a little background about yourself, whatever you'd like to share?
Okay, yeah. My name is Sean. I've been living in Ithaca for almost a decade now. Like you said here, writer, amateur, novice, if you will. Used to be a teacher. Now I've been working some retail stuff, and I just kind of am interested in the positivity that this podcast put out. So when I got invited, I said, yeah, I'm on board.
And we're glad you're here. Yes, this man is a teacher. He had the patience to deal with me in my adolescence. I can see it aged him at least a little bit, just dealing with me. I'm sure that's where the grades come from. I'm sure I'm responsible for
that's no, that's I just made that joke with another kid in school. But no, those are. But look, I think whatever seeds I planted are growing into this beautiful flower with us here today.
Thank you. No, I mean absolutely, man. You were definitely somebody who I don't know if I really saw anybody as a mentor at that point, but looking back now, I really do appreciate just your not only your presence in our relationship, but just your presence in the school. I think you really did make it a better place just with your compassion, your patience, your wisdom, and I just think your overall, sense of who you are. It really did add a lot to the school and to the culture. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, right back at you from the other side.
Yeah.
From the learner, not the learned.
Yeah, man. All right, so you got a couple of quotes for us today. I'm going to go ahead and let you start it off.
Okay, yeah, the first one I chose here, I thought this would be a good one, kind of knowing who you are and what we've kind of talked about in the world. Right. So my quote, it's from Susan Sontag, who is kind of just an activist writer. I don't know a ton about her. I think this was probably one of those Facebook quotes that scrolled by that kind of just stuck with you. You tuck in a save folder.
Yeah.
But it's 10% of any population is cruel no matter what. And 10% is merciful no matter what. And the remaining 80% can be moved in either direction.
I like that. Could you read it one more time for us?
Yeah, totally. So 10% of any population is cruel no matter what. And 10% is merciful no matter what. And the remaining 80% can be moved in either direction. Susan Sontag.
Wow.
So, yeah, I thought that was sort of one that, it kind of strikes you on a lot of levels, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Just taking at face value, just that idea that there's these 10% of people who are just like this. I mean, I always like to use the word pure, cruel. That's always the choice. That's like the mindset. And then you have these people who are 10% merciful. You think of your Mother Teresa's, whatever, those people that are like in this tiny gap. And then there's the rest of us, man. We're part of that 80%.
Right.
And that's, I'm sure, not like an exact statistic, like it wasn't a survey that they went out and took. But it kind of, even if it's metaphorical, really kind of has some real meaning. And especially, in times like we are now, where you can see people get swayed in many directions.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of reflects on that. I always think of it's not real science, but it falls into that bell curve, where if like almost any phenomenon, you have the people that end up, a tiny portion end up here, a tiny portion end up there, and most of us are in that kind of curve in the middle.
Yeah.
And we swing both back and forth all the time. I think we're all moved towards cruelty and mercy as humans. We're not in any way perfect.
Mm-hmm. Do you think intrinsically as a species we lean more towards one end of the spectrum?
I don't know. I hope that we lean towards mercy.
Mm-hmm.
If you think, but then if you look at actual nature, just nature as it is, it's cruel. Yeah. I mean, you watch any of those, watch a Discovery Channel thing about the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
90% of the time it's cruel. It's harsh. Nature itself could care less who you are.
Yeah.
There's not. But on the same note, they're on the other side of that. There's so much nurture. Even if you think of, watch my cats. I have 2 cats. Yeah. Sometimes they come up and whoop each other, and every once in a while they come around and they give each other that, that love of affection.
Yeah.
So I think the swaying is is the fact that we're not necessarily directed towards one or the other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, this quote actually a lot speaks to what inspires us to choose one or the other, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think throughout the day, we're doing both. I mean, you could go
Yeah.
to, like, I feel like I go to school and, maybe I help kids and that's really merciful, but then I go home and I put a pair of Nikes on, which
Mm-hmm.
by default, the
Yeah.
process is a little cruel, you know what I mean? But these
For
are
sure. For sure.
it's that sometimes you don't have an option,
Mm-hmm.
or you are swayed one way or another without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
If you think about food choices,
Mm-hmm.
we all know. I mean, most of us know at this point. I think our society's been pretty informed of how
Mm-hmm.
factory farming and those type of things
Right. That's pretty mainstream at this point.
those are they're by definition cruel, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know that
Without a doubt.
to get that egg sandwich, to get that
Yeah.
that big. But these are choices some of us make
Mm-hmm.
because there is no other option, so
Oh yeah. Yeah.
no matter how nice or how merciful we desire to be, there's just sacrifices or choices that you make that have to be.
Right.
What about you? What do you think? Do you feel, I mean, by nature, or is it by nurture?
Um. I think. I mean, the whole nature nurture argument obviously is one that'll probably go on throughout all of psychology and philosophy for a long time. But I believe that honestly, because we are animals, I think we're more prone towards the cruel because nature is cruel. Because nature is conscious, but it doesn't have a conscience. Nature it just like a lion doesn't maliciously eat a gazelle. It's just eating. It just does what it
Right.
does. I mean there is you can see in some animals there is like levels of like actually yeah. So I kind of take that back I guess because there are like examples of genuine like cruelty as well as like genuine like mercy and like love in the animal kingdom on beings that are much less conscious than us. So I guess I actually have to backtrack on my statement, um, which is why I do this. It helps me
Oh
challenge my
yeah,
own
yeah.
views. Yeah. But so I do think as animals we're naturally more prone to cruelty, and I think what a part of what makes us human is that ability to acknowledge and choose. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, a big part of that is just being born into a social environment, a culture, a household
Oh
where
sure.
most of your choices are made for you at least until the age of like maybe 12, 13, when
Oh
you really
yeah.
get some level of like independence. Parents start asking you, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? Things like that, giving you some freedom,
Mm-hmm.
which varies culture to culture and stuff. But
Oh, of course,
regardless,
huh?
yeah, you grow up and you just monkey see, monkey do, and that's really all you have.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. And I mean, even as men, we know that part of our culture, in a lot of ways,
Oh
male
yeah.
culture is to be fairly cruel to one another. There is not a whole lot of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
childhood reward for it's not little Johnny. Oh, go hug go make 5,000 friends. It's you want to be the best.
Yeah, yeah.
At all costs.
Don't don't hug your opponent. Don't shake his hand. Or yeah, maybe shake his hand because that's like the agreed upon thing. But don't be friends with your opponent. That's your opponent.
Oh
That's your
sure.
enemy.
Yeah, and the handshake is more procedural for the winner.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, it's like oh, good
Tom Brady.
try, good
Tom
try. You
Brady
can
shook
leave
every
now.
hand when he won.
Yeah,
Tom Brady loses, he don't shake a hand.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I had a friend once who said to me, I thought like this is at work talking about, he's on my side.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, he's not on your side. He'll step on you as soon as he has the chance because that's just,
Mm-hmm.
so much of what we do is surface level friendship,
Oh
or
yeah.
it's hard pressed to have a friend that is like
Mm-hmm.
deep and caring and compassionate in a way. So that's when you say culture and society do those things. It's
Mm-hmm.
when you think of some of the cruelest people in history, they're 8 out of 10 probably dudes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's very true. Very true.
So even in the sense of role models, who do
Mm-hmm.
we look to, and who I spoke earlier about that concept of inspiration.
Yeah.
When you think of who inspires you
I
to
was
do
really
these
glad you used
acts,
that word for that exact reason.
you think of when you think of mercy, it's Mother Teresa. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably your own mother. It's if that's someone
Right.
that you had in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's definitely that when we think about who's swaying us and how we're getting swayed, there's so many just swirling things. And then there also comes a point where you know how do we even define mercy? And, what does mercy
Mm-hmm.
even really entail?
It's a good question.
Because thinking from a standpoint, we don't really think of it as a strength, right?
No, no, we don't. It's considered a
Uh,
weakness.
for the most part, you think of it, it's yeah, something that's not, but when really in action, it's one of the strongest things you have to be able to do.
Yeah, things like mercy, forgiveness, compassion, these things take an enormous amount of strength. And not everyone can do it. And I think that's part of why it's easy as a society to say that these are weaknesses as opposed to strengths because it's not easy for most people to do. So it's
Oh
easier
yeah,
for the collective ego to be like, well, these aren't strengths; they're weaknesses because I can't readily do them. You know.
sure. And we hardly, it's especially again speaking from a male perspective, we don't do it for ourselves.
Mm.
There are so many times that we, the cliches we're our own harshest critics.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so it's an interesting that or if you think I always think of the real acts of mercy are your civil disobedience that is
Mm-hmm.
nonviolent protest.
Yeah.
Because again that's showing mercy to those who are being cruel to you in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And that to
Yeah.
me is the strongest. That's most of us lack the courage to ever do that.
I agree. I think that it's very yeah, again, it's very easy to demonize those who are in power or who we feel like are oppressing us or hurting us, even on an individual level and especially a societal level. It's very easy to just say, oh yeah, they're just bad, cruel people, and sometimes a lot of times they are. um, but it doesn't while they may in action often lack humanity, they still bleed, just like us, they and it's weird because we'll give ourselves or our neighbors or our friends or family, passes and try to be compassionate towards them. But then these people who maybe have significant amount of power in the world, we don't give them the same compassion. And it's like even most of these people, while they may perform cruel acts, they're not sadistic. Most of them. Some of them absolutely were,
Oh,
and commit sadistic acts. But I think in general, 99% of people, I believe, do what they believe to be right. The problem is their
mm-hmm.
beliefs and or their biology lead them towards decisions that just intrinsically are not right.
Okay. Yeah, totally. And this leads me actually to my little side note quote. This is a James Baldwin. Neither love nor terror makes one blind. Indifference makes one blind. So I
Mm,
think also that form of cruelty, to repeat it, it's neither love nor terror that makes one blind. Indifference makes one blind. And sometimes that's the biggest form of cruelty, is
yeah.
just that being indifferent to it and its existence.
Hmm.
That
Yeah. That reminds me of
again that could,
Man in
go
the
ahead,
Mirror,
yeah.
Michael Jackson. He says, "Who am I pretending not to see them be?" It's like it's what nerve I have to pretend to be indifferent. Nobody's really indifferent. They just don't want to think about certain things. And we can't spend our whole lives thinking about the issues, our general day to day, but to pretend that, oh, I don't care, man, or whatever. I don't care about anything. Like all that BS. It's just it's easier, but it just leaves you blind because it really does affect you and it affects someone you care about somewhere down the line, whatever it is. It affects our future
Mm-hmm.
as a species, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then this one kind of ties to it too. This is my other one, just to jump into it,
Hmm.
because it kind of thinks about this concept of when we're talking about what is mercy and how do we give it. This was
Right.
one I read recently. It's the goody goodies are the thieves of virtue, and that's Confucius. And again,
Hmm.
I'll say it because it's the twice as good. The goody goodies are the thieves of virtue. So I think there's also that
Hmm.
notion when we say like, how do we define mercy? Is are we doing it for the right reason?
Mm.
or is it like who gets to define it? It's such sometimes an unclearly defined thing. So like you think
Yeah.
of that person who's more like they think they're being merciful, they think they're being helpful, but they're kind of being doting or controlling or
Mm-hmm. Or like
um,
patronizing.
there you go. That's the word. That's
Yeah.
the word.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Right.
I agree. I kind of took it as yeah, it definitely ties into what we were saying before. I think that it's also easy to just create a one size fits all, a rule of thumb of always be cruel or always be merciful. You should never always do either. You should never have any sort of dogma. Like always be tolerant, always be kind, always be nice. Oh no, you shouldn't. I mean, being kind is wonderful. Being nice is wonderful. Being compassionate is wonderful. There are times where you have to put that all aside because, yeah, just being stuck in that, like, oh, I love everybody and everything, mindset, it can cloud your judgment. It can leave you blind to the reality of the situation. If so, having that rule of thumb is not good. If you can recognize the situation for what it really is and maybe contemplate and maybe even take action on a situation in a cruel way or one that's just not merciful per se. You don't act out of kindness or compassion or forgiveness. And then you can come to the point of, well, maybe I was wrong in this scenario. Here's how I could have let it go. Here's an act of kindness I could have taken. Then that's virtuous. That's moving past your former beliefs and pushing past your own emotions to come to a new belief, a new way of seeing things. And you don't even have to act on it. Maybe you can just go through those emotions of I'm angry, I'm upset, whatever, and I want to act this way. But you take time to reflect, which is not easy. And then there's the virtue of going through the motions before passing judgment, before taking action. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah, and
virtue.
like and kind of as we touched on before, that's just showing mercy to yourself, accepting. I think, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
not having that rule of thumb, but kind of accepting that we are both at once.
Yeah,
We're not pure creatures who can be pure. Giving all the time. If we give all the time, we have nothing left.
yeah.
Not that you're cruel necessarily to
Mm-hmm.
recharge the batteries, but accepting that that's just the sort of state of being alive is that you do both. You are swinging between both because there's only 10% of people on either side that are
Yeah,
pure for the sense of the word.
yeah.
So it's like accepting that as a reality, and allowing that to kind of define how you help others and how you treat others
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah,
I think, and this is kind of a deep historical, saying I was a teacher, I was a social studies teacher, knowing history.
right.
Much of the Southern culture towards slavery was that considering it merciful, considering it virtuous, because
Really?
in their own well. So if you look at some of the literature of the time, some of
Yeah.
the things they used to justify slavery was that concept that
Mm-hmm.
we had taken them from the literal jungle and look at
Oh yeah,
through
right. That narrative.
through the mercy of the plantation system we have put
Right.
clothes on their back, we've shown them
Yeah.
the word of God, we've given them
Yeah.
morals that
And
they
these
didn't
people
have.
truly believed it. Again, it's easy to demonize them. They believed it. They truly, truly believed it. They didn't write it. Yeah. Who at that point, who were they convincing? No one
Right.
but themselves. It's not like today where people try and paint a historical narrative. No, it was happening in real time then. They truly believed what they were saying.
Oh, I mean, and then I think I'm not saying this lives on, but in a lot of ways, but that is the sort of the legacy that I think some people probably still hold on to. And
Oh
when
yeah.
it came to the Civil War was
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways because of that concept.
Yeah.
That, and this is if you think of a lot of the Northern abolitionists, kind of took the different version. Seeing that, freeing them, and a lot of course we wanted to send them back to their home country, but that
Mm-hmm.
just that dichotomy of who gets it, who defines mercy and where does it go wrong sometimes, that concept, or how do we get it convoluted as humans,
Right.
and then how do we avoid that in our own lives, how do we not be patronizing while being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think in some degree it goes back to that, just accepting and thinking about our situations.
Yeah. I think something I was thinking about today, actually, kind of when I was thinking about things I wanted to talk about on the podcast. I think that the like merciful thing and patronizing, I think that's a very important thing to kind of distinguish. I think a big, I think a very important thing in all relationships, especially intimate relationships, because there's a huge potential for things like codependency in very intimate relationships. And so I think that there's a big difference between taking care of someone and helping them take care of themselves. I think that
Mm-hmm.
everyone needs to take care of themselves. And one of the many reasons we have friends and family and intimate partners is to help us carry our burdens, is to help us take care of ourselves. I'm not feeling great. Hey, can you watch the kids? Can you mow the lawn? Can you take care of some of the household duties? So that I can take time to take care of myself. Or hey, I'm not feeling great. Can we just talk? Can I lay with you? Can you distract me? Can we go do something silly? Having people around to help you take action in your own life is what's important.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and that goes back to being merciful to yourself, to saying, I'm
Mm,
not Superman. I mean, you think of so
yeah.
many, like you said, especially in that family situation, how many moms have that S on their chest where they're just,
Mm,
again, going back to kind of our societal things, that's what we expect out of them.
yeah. Yeah.
To what defines the role of a mother is
Mm,
mildly insane, in a way. It's so much.
yeah.
It's a huge burden. Sometimes, obviously, some people embrace it and it works great. But like,
Mm,
what we ask of them is a lot,
yeah. I think
because
there's a
that's
lot
what
less
we
room for
expect from
error.
them. We expect them to be the merciful, the provider, the giver, the one to have that sort of
Mm,
depth genetically, I guess, for some of our convolutions.
yeah.
But like you said, and that's kind of what has always, like when you said, as me as a teacher, some of the things you described are some of the things I've tried to do is to be that support to people.
Mm,
And I'll sprinkle in one more quote here since I had it. This was just I don't know, I'll mispronounce the name, but it was another scrolly one on
yeah.
Facebook. It was, question, how do we treat others? The answer from this Ramana Maharishi: there are no others.
Mm,
It's like, how do we
beautiful.
treat others? Well, there are no others. You
Yeah.
treat them as an extension of yourself. And I think that's a lot what
Right.
you described with that partnership idea
Mm,
is, the true partnership is really, I mean, it's kind of corny, but you're really creating one out of two in a way.
mm,
When it vibes in that perfect way, there is, you know, your partner will either predict what you need, or in a trusting relationship, you feel comfortable asking for what you need.
right.
Which, to flip it back to the male side, is often something we struggle to do, is
Mm,
to actually put down our guard and say, I don't think I can do X, Y, Z.
right.
Because as much as there's a lot of there's a lot of expectations on us too, as that
Right.
stereotypical provider, no matter what.
Mm,
You know, Bob goes out to the business world and does cruel things all day.
mm,
He's a stockbroker who cuts people out and does this or that. But
yeah.
hey, that's what he's got to do. That's
That's what he's
that's
got to do, and then he's got to come
that's
home and hug and kiss his wife and kids. Like nothing happens. You know.
right, and we'll celebrate him for that.
Yeah.
That's the narrative that we have here. That, and again, that goes back to kind of the working world, which is a male-oriented world, which is again kind of cruel by nature.
Yeah.
You even think of sports stars. There's as much
Mm,
as I love sports, a lot of times I feel like athletics and the way it's portrayed is ends up with dudes just being cruel to each other. I think even,
oh.
not to dip too far into it, but I mean,
Yeah.
even like LeBron's having a meltdown right now.
Oh
The
yeah.
dude, I mean,
Yeah. He's losing
or
it.
I mean, even if you think about Michael
Yeah.
Jordan, I mean, everybody said
Oh.
to
Oh my
to be
God.
his teammate was essentially to
Go through
live in
hell.
fear of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's celebrated for that. Again, yeah. These
Oh
people
yeah,
are celebrated for it, and I think there is some level. I believe they should be allowed some level of leniency because we do have to acknowledge the nature of what they do for a living, especially to be at the best of the best in the arenas that they do, because what they do is competitive, physical. I'm talking about athletes in general, but especially the more physical ones. What they do is it's competitive, it's physical, and I mean, yeah, a lot of people try and downplay it. Oh, it's just a game. Okay, sure, this is how they feed their families. we have to remember that this for them and for a lot of athletes, it was survival for them. It may have been their only way
Oh
out.
yeah.
And embracing that more aggressive side of them, and to some level, and which can get to a point of cruelty and anger and things like that. That's for a lot of them, it's part of what allows them to do what they do. Yeah, to not just go out there and want to be the best they can, but also to prove, no, I'm better than you. No, I want to put you down. No, I want to make you feel bad. I want to leave a mark on you psychologically. It's hard for the average person to think about, like, how could you want to do that? But it's a whole different mindset. But it's not something you want to see in everyday life, especially not in leaders, per se.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we transfer a lot of our warrior concepts onto athletes. Those kind of things that you just described.
I believe they really are, to take physical punishment, even in things that aren't super physical, like maybe like baseball. Like they're using their bodies. At the end of their careers, they really, really use them.
Oh yeah, for sure, and that's what we expect out of them. I mean, you think of any football player who says, "I have a concussion," what the general reaction is? Sorry, bro, get back out there.
Yeah. Or I mean, imagine dudes like tearing their ACL multiple times. Always had 5 knee surgeries throughout his career. I'm sorry, I've never torn my ACL. I would imagine if that happened to me once, I'd be like, yeah, that's it. It's been fun. It's been great. I made more than enough. I'll be on the sidelines from now on, calling the games.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So they really are warriors in a lot of sense. So I think it's very important to remember that.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's what we expect out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll throw my quote in there. I also have one from James Baldwin.
Nice. Perfect.
And it's one I don't remember where I saw it actually, but it's one I haven't necessarily dissected a whole lot in my brain, so I'm kind of excited actually to like do it now in real time. I wrote it down when and wherever I heard it. So he says, "Many of them indeed know better, but as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger." I'll give it one more time.
Yeah.
"Many of them indeed know better, but as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed. To be committed is to be in danger." James Baldwin.
Yeah, that's a great one. Shout out to English Seminar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great one. I think that is one that I personally carry around with me. Mm-hmm. It really thinks to me that to relate it to what we're talking about now, but to also unpack it, is that concept, again, thinking of your nonviolent protest, of your standing up to those who are cruel. It's to go against the flow. That's to act in a way that maybe is different, is to be committed to that. And once people see that you're committed to that, then if they don't like it, I mean, they're coming for you.
Yeah, you
one way
put
I see
yourself
it.
in the way, in the line of fire. Anytime if you take a stand on anything, no matter what it is, chocolate versus vanilla ice cream, you've now opened yourself up to a whole world of people who are on the other side of that. And the beautiful thing is that, people are very passionate, and often very compassionate. And I think, I like the way he puts that, to act, or what was it exactly? The last couple of lines.
Oh, well, I mean, to act is to be committed to go against the flow.
Yes,
to do anything. If you think about, we all know that there's the box, right?
Yes.
And anytime, I mean, you started with the vanilla versus chocolate, but you can elevate that up to the, if you think about someone who is trans, what that, to be committed to that in a social thing, that's to put you in danger.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
And the worst part being, most of us, and the hardest part is even to get to that commitment. I mean, if you go into a room of chocolate lovers and you love vanilla, you might just be like, yeah, I love chocolate, man.
Yeah, it's easy.
Because it's easy. It's right. Yeah. It's so that the more you notch that up, the more it becomes like such a powerful quote. I mean, to be honest, like I've had work positions where I've had to, stand up for the person, and I had to stand up knowing that, like, this might put my job in danger. I mean, that's why we have all these laws to protect us from, retaliation and all of these things. But like, I mean, you even know at school, you were a person who was strong enough to stand up to a bunch of different things, whether I can't give a specific example, but I mean, I always saw you as someone who was willing to make that commitment, even in spite of the danger.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. And I did, and I feel like that's still me. I think I put myself in those scenarios much less now, being an adult, just kind of knowing when I'm going to get somewhere with a conversation, and kind of deciding what I want to give my energy to. But anytime where I feel like I'm in a position where taking a stand is important, I do. You saw it didn't matter to me whether it was my peers or faculty or whoever. It's if I feel like we're at an impasse and I believe in very strongly whatever it is I believe in, then I'm going to speak on that. I'm going to stand by it. And if after reflection later I'm like, hey, I was in the wrong, or hey, I still think you're in the wrong, I'm going to be authentic about it, regardless. And I think that's really important for us to do as people. Stand by what you believe in. As much as I might want someone to believe in what I believe is right, I always want people to act on what they believe is right.
Right. And I think that goes back to the original quote of how people are swayed. Yeah. We are swayed by other people who are committed. Mm-hmm. What gives that vanilla, maybe there's another vanilla lover in that chocolate room who's been hiding it too. Yeah. And, you go in there and you say, you know what, I don't care if 9 out of 10 people love it. Yeah. I love it. And then that person goes, hey, you know what? That's me. I kind of dig that too. And that speaks to the concept of, one of the biggest forms of oppression is invisibility. Yeah. So to have people, you have to have people who are willing to take on that danger to make a movement, or to, especially when it comes to, concepts like this we talked about, like showing mercy or inspiring others to do it. It takes that commitment. I mean, like even your podcast here, this is a commitment to you. You've committed. It's on the internet. It's, you can't, I mean, you can take it back, but whatever is done is done.
It's out there.
You said, you probably spent months thinking about it. Should I do it? What are the what if? Like you said, what are the what ifs?
And about a year. About a year in that space.
And I feel the same way about my writing. I have so many things I've written that I just don't have the courage to share, or, because when you share it, you've committed to it, and then you're in danger of whatever it might be. We've already kind of spoke on the elevation of what the danger might be. Right. Obviously the danger is my own sensitivity to criticism, or somebody not liking it, or whatever it might be. Yeah. But going back to like civil rights protests, to those kids that sat at the lunch counters, committed themselves to it and accepted a whole lot of danger. I mean, some death even. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the danger aspect. I mean, there's a societal aspect, of like being an outcast or being ridiculed, or things like that. But there is still, very much so today, there is even just opinions can be dangerous. It can threaten your. I mean, it can bring about people who are very extremists who may want to physically harm someone, literally just for their opinion. There's that, but there is also kind of like you talked about, like with the job thing, like maybe standing up for something or saying something may not get you directly fired, but it could change the narrative about somebody to where you start looking around for jobs and people are like, well, we'll consider you, but they heard from so-and-so that, Sean supports or doesn't support so-and-so, and we're not going to bring him on board. There's that. And I think that happens all the time still. And that's why, allyship is, you have some alliance. You know what I mean? By default, I have an alliance with white hetero males. Yeah. They will look at me. They will, maybe, like I said, I don't look super hetero all the time, but they will look at me and say, he's with us. They'll look at you and say, you're part of this. They will look at a woman and say, she's in alliance with all the other women. Yeah. So when you step to cross that line, especially as men, we know this. When you step across that line, you've turned your back on this unspoken alliance, and that's the commitment, and that's the danger. Yeah. And that's why we often avoid those scenarios. We stay quiet. 9 out of 10 people are bystanders.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
being an upstander is rare because of all these things we've said of the danger of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you make progress. I mean, there has to be that one person who stands up and says this is what's right or this is what needs to change. And again, that's what gets the people to march behind them in a way.
Yeah, it creates that snowball effect. It's like you were saying how, if that vanilla lover goes into the chocolate room and they're like, I like vanilla, and then someone else stands up and it's like, you know what? Actually, I've been hiding it. I like vanilla too. A lot of times, maybe 8 out of 10 of those people actually like vanilla, but they never had the courage to say something, and maybe they still never will, but they might quietly support vanilla. Which is it's progress. And again, and I don't want to shame people who maybe aren't as vocal or aren't as active, in terms
Oh
of
no.
support or anything, because again, like it is tough. It is scary. It involves risks, and I think that there's many, many ways to support whatever it is you want to support. You can never speak out about, like, let's say, like, social injustice, but nobody might know that you donate thousands of dollars every year to specific causes or things like that. And if that's your way of giving, that's what you're comfortable with, then people should just appreciate the support in whatever form it comes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. No, that's great, and that's super important not to shine the spotlight just on the people who are standing up in front, being vocal, because there are so many subtle ways. And
Mm-hmm.
then there were people. They will come to you in secret and be like, "Hey, I never had the courage to say that. I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to XYZ quietly myself." And again, you see where that network is.
Right.
And then in that vanilla chocolate room, then there's probably one person who loves strawberry,
Yeah,
and then they're
right.
like, you know
Right.
what, this is my time. The door has been opened.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very, very good point. Yeah, I think that, yeah, just having the door open for conversation. It's you start to realize there's so much more. We get very caught up in, like, dichotomy. In our society, and I think honestly, as a people, I think we get very caught up in that. The black and white thing.
Oh,
I don't think it's necessarily
oh
just a
yeah.
societal thing here in the states.
Oh no. I mean, it's we live in a good versus evil society. That
Yeah.
there is the middle ground.
Yeah.
There's the cruel,
Mercy or
there's the
cruelty.
merciful. There's yeah, no, totally. That is absolutely how we live. I mean, but that's kind of where I love. You've delved into this sort of Eastern thought, or more of those where there is a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
Other cultures, or if you think of um, even when I said we are both merciful and cruel at the same time, like
Mm-hmm.
accepting that is
Yeah.
kind of going against the grain of the good. This character, and I think we see it a lot more in movies today, where you have characters who are
Mm-hmm.
balancing that line between good and evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't love Breaking Bad, but you watch that show, and there's that point where is this guy a hero or is he not? As a
That's a
cultural
great
standpoint.
point. I was reading a book earlier, kind of talking about this, like, the show Dexter. Have you seen it or heard of it?
Yeah, yeah. Not
Yeah.
like huge fan, but I know of it.
Yeah, yeah, but just like the idea, like, okay, guy's a serial killer, but he's killing people who are negatively and maliciously contributing to society. So it's like good guy, bad guy, anti-hero, hero. And I'm sure some people are very much like, no, he's killing people, that's wrong. And then I'm sure there's plenty of people who are like, well, but he's killing bad guys, of course it's okay. And there's the other 80% who are like, well, I don't know. It is a gray area, and I think it's easier to just be like, no, it's wrong, okay, it's right. But it raises a lot of questions, and it takes into consideration how what kind of morals and values we have.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, we don't like things that aren't closed books. We want that happy ending. We
Mm-hmm.
want it to. We don't like
Yeah.
imperfection. We love things that are pure.
Mm-hmm.
We want our hero to be purely good, and we want our
Mm-hmm.
villain to be purely evil, because then it makes it easy.
Right.
It makes it's something more than humans, because humans are by nature fraught with
Mm-hmm.
things. And again, going back to the original idea, one of the best things we can do, and that's why we need to be merciful to ourselves, because you said,
Mm-hmm.
we're animals. We're slightly above some in our ability to self-reflect and
Yeah.
see our role as cultivators, or stewards.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that, but at the same time, even I don't really. I've kind of gone to a plant-based living, but there's that notion that you're still killing plants. You
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
that's again, there's because there's no escaping it. Even if you think economically, there's always opportunity cost. Nothing
for sure.
is without some depletion of resource.
Everything, there's always sacrifice in some way.
Yeah, totally. Yes. So I'm going to throw one more Baldwin quote since we kind of got on this subject, and it's from that same piece that you read from. And this kind of speaks to that concept of standing up or finding inspiration on how to do good acts or merciful acts.
Right.
And this is specifically about America here. He says, "For this is your home, my friend. Do not be driven from it. Great people have done great things here and will again." So I'll read it again. "For this is your home, my friend. Do not be driven from it. Great men have done great things here and will again."
Didn't he move to France?
He did, but then I think that was part of what. Well, but he did because
I'm just poking fun.
Yeah, and purely for the writing though, because he needed to have that experience that it's like when you don't see yourself until you step out of and look at it from a different perspective.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Travel. Everybody says travel is one of the hugest ways. I mean, again, being Americans, we're often so ignorant of our own culture. The people like you in shows like this really dissect our culture, but you've got a lot of people who just assume everybody thinks like we do.
I don't remember the exact percentage, but an astounding amount of Americans have never left their home state. Let's just read it's like travel culture and stuff. There's so many people who just maybe never even leave their hometown, But
oh yeah. Oh, and I mean, one of the biggest things when you have, I guess, diversity interactions that go bad is when people don't recognize culture. They don't see it in themselves, so they're completely unable to see it in others.
Right. Yeah.
If you lack a self-awareness of what mainstream American culture is, you just assume everybody's kind of doing what you're doing, thinking the way you think about it. I mean, I always like to go back to the question, who invented rock and roll? That will right there tell you what culture you subscribe to.
Right.
Your mainstream American's going to say Elvis.
Right.
Cut and dried. That's my culture tells me that Elvis invented rock and roll, and you can have other cultures who will say, well, no, not really. Like there was a whole history of Southern musicians that he kind of, for lack of, or just for ease, stole the music from.
Yeah.
Like that's where rock and roll came to your culture.
Right. Yeah.
But to me, I remember I actually asked that in a classroom, and it kind of went downhill quick. There was a pretty heated argument where people did not want to see eye to eye on that, and I was just like, well, historically speaking, it was not Elvis. Like the facts,
right.
The facts will show you. But that speaks to how cultures shape us and how we think about the world.
Yeah, I think it's important you put it that way, how it shapes us, because it does. I think that's a big part of it. It's not like people are just hung up on facts or non-facts. It's their culture is a part of who they are, so it's a part of their self-identity, and so to question that is to challenge that, is to make them question part of their identity. It may not seem like it's about them, but it affects their ego, and not that they have to be an egotistical person or anything. It's just anytime you present somebody with new or challenging information, it forces them to reflect on that, and I think that can force even more reflection. It's like you start kind of chipping away at the image they have of the world, and they really don't want it to shatter. They don't want to have to rebuild it.
No, I think they've actually, I don't know if it's like totally scientifically proven, but they say your instant reaction is to double down on your original belief.
Yep.
When confronted with something different. That your instant reaction is like to forcefully push that away and reinforce what you thought. I think cognitive dissonance, I believe, is the phrase.
Yeah. I mean, I think I recognize that I did that at a younger age, and I kind of had to like laugh at myself about it. Like when I hear something that's like not sure, like hits my ego, I'm like, no fucking way, no way. All right, it might be true, but I don't want to talk about it right now. Like I'm like knowing I'll reflect on it, but like I know I'm gonna have that initial emotional reaction. So it's just like, why not just accept it, get it out of the way, and just kind of get over it. It's because it's natural. It's natural.
It is, and you kind of put that like it's an easy thing. For a lot of people, they never make it past that. They don't even acknowledge the emotion. Like I said, I've seen from hearing these podcasts, you've done a lot of personal work to be able to see it, acknowledge it, and then, like you said, take that minute. There's a lot of people who will never make it past that first phase.
Yeah.
Because they don't, you have a lot of people who won't even acknowledge emotions in the first place.
It's yeah, no, it's not easy, but a lot of it obviously is for just like personal growth, but it also is to be able to do things like this, like to be able to connect with more people and help
Right.
reestablish our connection as a people. When you look at most of the problems we have in the world, is because we have this illusion that we're separate, and I think that conversations like this and getting different perspective, which we really is really really important. It's I think it's the medicine for the sickness of today's society.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because ultimately you're going to end up in a community, but it's where we can really have our communities overlap and be merciful and kind to each other.
Right.
Because there's always going to be you're going to have to draw a line in the sand every once in a while, to whether it's chocolate versus vanilla ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you're going to have different opinions based on people's life perspectives or experiences, and like the hardest part is making that part okay, is being able to figure out what it needs to kind of navigate that, how that works. That's why we end up with nations and countries and states, because ultimately we say, or if you go back to, and I'm not waxing like I'm some Native American expert, but that's how you end up with tribes.
Right.
In my basic understanding, in Bear Clan we do this, in Turtle Clan we do that.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, both of those might be, and again, I apologize to the community at large, but we're both Iroquois. We have this overarching thing.
Yeah.
But within those things, we have variations. I mean, that's why I'm a basketball fan, but I really love the Knicks or whatever,
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You have to have that. It's
mm-hmm.
It's when it turns to cruelty. When they come to town and you smash their bus because you lost the game. That's where we lose track of. Maybe get too into it, and we lose track of self and of others. They become the other.
Yeah.
You've gone past a love of basketball for a love for whatever it might be, trashing things, or a love of feeding into your own anger and own testosterone fueled wanting victory thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think kind of tying into what we were talking about earlier with the athletes, like one thing that like LeBron is, like heavily criticized for, and honestly a lot by like older fans, is his embracing of his competitors of the younger generation, his willingness to be like to acknowledge the success and accomplishments of people who maybe just beat him right then and there, like and being genuinely happy for them, because it's everyone else will have this mindset of like, no, it's you versus them, and he's like, no, this is in terms of that 48 minutes, yeah, it's me versus them. As soon as that buzzer goes, we go back to just we're people. We're people who have a job to do,
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, by definition, attempting to be the greatest of all time is saying you care nothing more than being separate.
Yeah. It's separating
like
yourself.
Your whole goal is to be the most separated by all of these accolades,
but it's
or
like,
whatever it might
it's
be.
within those four lines. It's when it comes to me and you, you're here, I'm way up here in terms of basketball. But as human beings, we're right here, where and we have to remember that. And I think that's where we get confused and conflated sometimes. Like I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Like the tribes versus like we're both Iroquois. The Knicks versus just enjoying basketball. That's very important, because we just keep creating these like subsections and subgenres. Where we and it can be great, because if it's used in a positive manner, if it's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, I really like basketball. Oh, you like basketball? I like basketball too. What team you like? I like the Knicks. Oh, I like the Knicks too. Da-da-da. Who is your favorite player? Oh, Patrick Ewing. Oh, me too. And you can keep getting smaller and smaller and connect more, or you can get smaller and smaller and disconnect more.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why they wear uniforms. You've taken away that separation. I mean that's what's when you look in a crowd and everyone's wearing orange and blue. That's what is
unity.
Part of the vibe. That's why unity. You love team, because you look at these other people and you go, those are my people.
Yeah. Which is, it's again, that's humanistic. We want to do that. That's natural. It's it's tribal. It's cultural. It's very important in a lot of ways. I think if we can get to a point of just doing that, and still just acknowledging that people on the other side are still people, then I think we've reached a great place.
Oh yeah, totally. And they think they are just as right as you are, and
Yeah,
acknowledging that and being at peace with it. It's sort of that agree to disagree.
yeah,
It's sort of cliche, but there's that point again where Knicks fans are here and you fans are there, and hopefully we keep it peaceful because that's ultimately
yeah,
what's going to be best for everybody.
yeah,
Which kind of leads me, I know we're probably hitting towards the mark here. My poem kind of speaks to that, so I don't know if maybe this is a good time.
yeah. No, this would be a perfect way to close it out. Please, some original material.
Okay, cool. So I might have had a title for this, but I don't have it with me, so I'll just read it.
Okay.
I'll read it twice, I guess. That's what John Raymond always said: once for just to take it in, and once for the words.
Absolutely.
All right. Take a hard look at yourself. If humanity was a letter grade, would you pass? If community surrounded you, would yours stand with open arms, or simply point you towards the road? If all labor was voluntary, would you still work only for the weekend, punch a time clock and beg for promotions? Take a deep look in yourself. Are you merely asking others for the change you wish, or using every breath out there making it? I'll leave you. So take a hard look at yourself. If humanity was a letter grade, would you pass? If community surrounded you, would yours stand with open arms, or simply point you towards the road? If all labor was voluntary, would you still work only for the weekend, punch a time clock and beg for promotions? Take a deep look in yourself. Are you merely asking others for the change you wish, or are you using every breath out there making it? By Sean Mckean.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I really love that. What do you feel like inspired that?
Well, it's actually a collection. I'll just like, I'll go for it. It's a little collection of It's called Poems for the Country I Love.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's poorly written poetry for the country I love is the full
Yeah,
title.
yeah.
That one just kind of inspired me because there's always that, again, thinking of being your own harshest critic. It's kind of that
Mm-hmm.
self-reflection of not only what are you doing, what do you stand for, who are you placing. If you don't like what you stand for, where are you placing that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of just like a short, self-reflective one of those that allows the reader to kind of to figure it out for themselves, I guess. Because you could read that and say, yeah, my community loves me, or it might take you a pause and be like, man, would they love me?
Right.
Would are there open arms, or would they point me towards the road? And sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
think, well, what communities would welcome me and what ones wouldn't? Because there's a point where not everyone's going to welcome you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of the inspiration, and just that it felt like it was short and kind of powerful. And I think it starts at the beginning, so it's kind of that opening thought about like, what is you, what where are you in this country, and like where, as far as
Right.
who your people are, and what do you think about, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it definitely was powerful. It really resonated with me. That's gonna stick with me. Um,
All right, well, maybe I'll send you a copy of the poet's poems.
yeah, I would love that. Yes, please do. Please
Okay,
do.
shameless
Um,
self promotion.
mhm. No, I mean I want everyone. I want to have lots of writers and everything on here. I want to get into people's own stuff. I want them to promote their stuff because it's again, yeah, I know. So I really appreciate you, and I want to applaud you for sharing some of your own material because that's not always easy. Even for people
Yeah.
who do it on the regularly, people who are famous for doing it, it still may never be easy for them. They just every
But
single time they have to muster up the courage to do it,
yes,
and
and it's very therapeutic writing, so it's not always
yeah,
like I'm not doing it for an audience other than myself,
right.
I guess.
Well,
You know,
that's the best writing, and that's what makes it the writing that people need to hear because you're doing it for yourself. It's coming from such a genuine, authentic place that it's going to have to be great writing. I believe.
yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad. Thank you for giving me a platform to share it. And this is that kind of commitment. That's putting it
Mhm.
out there, being ready for wherever it goes, good, bad, or otherwise.
Absolutely. Um, One thing, I mean, it was all great. The thing that really stuck in my head that I want to go over because it asked a question that I've been asking myself honestly since like the pandemic started. the idea of like if all labor was voluntary, what you said, would you still work for the weekend and for promotions, things like that? I think that's a very important intrinsic question people need to ask themselves. And I think unfortunately, while we're getting to a point where people are beginning to ask that question, for a lot of people they feel like it's so late in their lives that it becomes this whole process of kind of having to like rebuild what you value, your whole value system, and you have to do all this soul searching, which is it's beautiful. I mean, it's an amazing, I think, privilege to just even to get to that point of consciousness and to go through that whole process. It's not easy, it's not fun, but I think it's a privilege to even get there. Um, Obviously, it would be better if people could have that perspective before they maybe commit to a certain lifestyle. But everyone's on their own
Right.
journey. But I think
Oh
just the
yeah.
question of like, if all labor was voluntary, what would people get up and do every day? What would we
Right.
do as people? I think that we saw for a lot of people, like when they got the unemployment, it's like, I'm just gonna sit at home. I don't need to get a job.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that created a whole dichotomy and everything. Obviously, my perspective was like, I get both sides of it, but I think I understand if you were doing something every day, probably 40 hours a week, regardless of the pay, and you don't have to do it, or you're not excited about going back and doing it, why would you? If you have the opportunity to have your needs met, to be able to spend time with friends and family and on hobbies, whatever, if whatever you were getting up to do to bring in income wasn't intrinsically adding value to your life in a way that you're missing it, you're thriving to go back to it, screw it.
Right.
Screw it. Like, I think we need to ask ourselves as a people, like, what is essential in terms of where we're going as a culture?
Yeah.
Teachers,
No. No.
doctors,
I think it's been a
writers.
crazy turning point in history where people are looking at that in a huge way, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that as much as when things fall apart, that's an opportunity to rebuild.
Mm,
From the ashes rises the phoenix. Like
yeah.
everything is cyclical. We're in
Hmm.
spring right now. And spring is the rebirth of everything that died over the fall and the winter.
Right.
There's embracing it and there's accepting it or there's fighting it. And
Hmm.
I'm glad that you're embracing it and I'm in that too right now. So
Yeah. I like to
it's
think I
important.
am. Yeah. Um, I honestly, I feel
Well,
like trying to fight it. It's just it just doesn't work.
yeah. Well, there's some point where you can lay down plans, but there's no promises, man. The future isn't promised tomorrow. So it's
Yeah.
and this is a cool. Lead you one more quote. It's why it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yes. Yeah. I forget where I heard. Actually, it was on.
Yeah, I've seen that one around
Yeah, but I love that one.
because that's you just got to be prepared for whatever's coming.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
I think you
that's
have to
that's
have
why you
that ability in
yeah,
you.
be merciful with yourself, love
Yeah.
yourself, and be prepared that change is the only constant.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, all right, my man. It's been a real pleasure. I'm glad we could wax intellectual here. Keep the podcast going.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you. Yeah. Do you have any promotion you want to do for yourself?
Oh man, no, I don't have no shout outs. I guess if
Hmm.
I'll share my poetry with you if you want to put it out there. No, I got nothing, man. I'm just here, just happy to support this podcast. I think you're putting positivity out in the world,
Hmm.
and when you asked me to be part of it, I said, absolutely, man. It's a good thing, and just keep it rolling. I'll give you a shout out rather than myself. Selfless as always.
As
But no, for
always,
real. Like, I mean, I'm glad you're here. You're doing it, and if you ever want me to come back sometime, if it keeps going, I'll love it.
we'll definitely have you back on. Definitely. All right.
All right,
Thank you, man. I appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
all right. Peace, brother.
Bye, Sean.